Mr. Chancellor, ladies and gentlemen, and Carleton graduates, it's my great pleasure to introduce Mr. Michael Potter. Depending on your interest, you will know of Mr. Potter for at least one of his many and diverse accomplishments. After graduating from the Royal Military College and earning his master's degree, Mr. Potter worked as a naval officer and federal civil servant. He then joined the private sector and led Cognos as its chief executive officer from its inception in 1972 until 1995. Cognos, as you know, is an Ottawa-based software services company specializing in business intelligence and performance management products. Under his leadership, Cognos embarked on a path of rapid international growth and emerged as the largest company in its sector in Canada, with annual revenues of over $1 billion and employing over 3,500 people. Today, as a division of IBM, the organization remains an important component of the software technology sector, in particular in the area of business analytics, and remains an engine of employment for the National Capital Region. Mr. Potter, a pilot and aircraft enthusiast, combined his love for Canadian aviation and his philanthropic spirit to create Vintage Wings. This is a charitable foundation dedicated to the restoration and display of a variety of historic Canadian aircraft, mainly from the World War II era. Mike also operates those planes, flying some of the rarest and most historically significant aircraft in the world, wowing crowds with aerobatics displays. Mike is a licensed pilot. He's licensed for aerobatics display of various World War II fighters and is also an honorary colonel of the RCAF Snowbirds. Now, when he's not in the air, Mike is likely in the water, pursuing his passion as a lifelong sailor and scuba diver. He passed on this passion to his 3 young daughters, aged 10, 14, and 16, who are with us here today. They are divers, swimmers, and sailors themselves. Mr. Potter's commitment to philanthropy earned him the Ottawa Philanthropist of the Year award in 2009. Mr. Potter, through business leadership, through philanthropy, and through involvement in the community, has made an incredible mark on Ottawa. Mr. Chancellor, in recognition of his outstanding commitment to philanthropic endeavors and contribution to the high technology industry in the National Capital Region, I request that you confer the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa, upon Michael Potter.
By virtue of my authority, I confer upon you this degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa. Congratulations, Mr. Chancellor.
Thank you very much for those kind words, Dr. Gibran. Chancellor Chi, President Runte, members of the board, members of the faculty, guests, and most of all, the graduates who are here to celebrate today. Thank you so much for giving me the privilege of being part of your celebration. Now, when I first got a call 2 or 3 months ago about an honorary degree, I thought, that's really cool. And then I realized that I had to give some sort of convocation address, and that usually takes the form of advice to the graduating class. And that, I must admit, gave me pause, because I'm not by nature a guy who feels qualified to tell others how to live their lives. And by the way, I live with 2 teenage girls and a 10-year-old daughter who remind me every day that I'm not qualified to tell people how to live their lives. Now, not to sound immodest, but I know why I was asked. My business life turned out to be very successful. Post-business life, quite philanthropic, some very cool flying and some amazing airplanes. family life, 3 absolutely stunning young girls, and they certainly look good on any resume. But the truth is that although things worked out better than I could ever have imagined, my life has been full of crazy mistakes, outrageous risks, blind alleys, me trying desperately to overcome my limitations, and generally being too willing to charge ahead before I had everything figured out. Now, I tried to tidy up that story and write a coherent speech with some sage advice. When it was done, it didn't sound authentic, it didn't sound like me, and about 36 hours ago, I chucked it out. And I realized that it's because of all those mistakes and crazy risks that they are the story, and the dogged perseverance and a large measure of good luck, things usually work out. So I guess the theme of my remarks today is something like life is messy and deal with it. And I'd like to take a few minutes to develop that theme. Like many of us, we're influenced by things that happened before we were born. In my case, I had 2 parents that were crazy enough to get born or to get married in London in 1939 on the eve of the Battle of Britain, to have 2 kids in 1942 and 1943 under the Blitz. When I learned of that, when I was old enough to realize, put that together, I just thought they must have been absolutely delusional. But I later came to realize that they were really just the personification of the wartime message that I have on my coffee cup, and maybe you have on yours: keep calm and carry on. They came to Canada, and my teenage ambition, when I was old enough to have one, was to be an officer in the Navy. I was fortunate enough to be accepted in military college. After that, graduate work in physics, as you've heard, and so after 7 years, there I was, 5 years of military college behind me, 2 degrees in physics, commissioned as a Navy lieutenant, and here's where the messiness comes in. The only thing I was sure about at that time of my life is that I didn't want a career as a naval officer, and I didn't want a career in physics. And it might surprise you to hear me say that that didn't trouble me much. I believed, perhaps naively, that my education had given me transferable skills, and I still thought I could do whatever I wanted to. What I wanted to do was to be in business for myself, basically to not have a boss, to be independent. I decided to create a software firm along with a couple of partners. None of us had any knowledge of or experience in business. To make it worse, within a couple of years, I made the decision to buy out my partners because I had grander visions of the future for that company than they did. And the milestone event I want to take us all back to was in the late 70s. It's vivid in my memory. It was New Year's Eve. I wasn't celebrating. I was sitting in the office of my bank manager, and this is before electronic transfer. He was waving a wad of checks drawn on our company account, which had no funds. We had broken every basic rule of business, a leveraged buyout, although I didn't know what it was called that at the time, with big payments to my former partners, expanding much too fast without securing financing. And we weren't even smart enough to screw our suppliers, which you're supposed to do when you run into a crash crunch. So our bank manager, bless him, said he would hold the checks for 2 business days into the new year. Long story short, we hustled, invoices were paid, business picked up, and we never looked back. Now you can decide whether that kind of near-death experience was a good idea, and if you had ever put yourself in that position. For me, it was worth the risk, and I would do it again. And most important, I learned from it. Cognos never went to the brink again, mainly because we brought in equity capital when we needed it, privately initially and then through the public market. And that doesn't mean that its path to the success was a smooth one. It took 39 years from the inception of Cognos to become a company of 3,500 employees, 23,000 customers in 135 countries, $1 billion in revenue, and in 2008, a $5 billion payout to its shareholders. Along the way, the company reinvented itself multiple times as technology and markets changed. And yes, Cognos did become a great success, but the real story is one of ups and downs, of mistakes and recoveries, of insurmountable obstacles, and rapid shifts in directions. And that's what I remember most, that's what I value most. Flying, as you've heard, has also been a big part of my life, particularly recently, but going back 45 years. I can tell you that flying is also not the tidy, predictable activity that you might think it is. Pilots make mistakes all the time. The trick is to learn from them, and of course, to try hard not to make lethal ones. I have the opportunity to fly occasionally with the snowbirds, and even more importantly, to sit in on their pre-flight briefings and their post-flight briefings. Now, what is said in the briefing room stays in the briefing room, but I can tell you this. During every post-flight briefing, time is taken to go around the table, and each member of the team talks about the mistakes he made on that flight. This is not a group therapy session. It's about talking through what you did wrong, what you learned from it, and how you're going to fix it. And you know what? I've been in maybe 24 of those briefings, 9 seasoned military pilots around the table. They've just finished a series of loops and rolls and splits and rejoins at 300 knots in a 9-plane formation, a few feet apart. And I've never once heard one of those guys say, "No, I didn't make any mistakes today." And that's why they're so good, and we can all learn from it. I reflected when preparing for this on my own flying experience, and I was somewhat chastened by how long the list of screw-ups was over the last 45 years. I've landed a glider in the US by mistake because I didn't notice the border on the chart, and that was my first ever cross-country gliding flight. I've blundered into a thunderstorm, and that, I will tell you, scared the heck out of me. I've landed in the dark at an unlighted airport on the prairies. Why? Because I forgot to check the time of sunset. And I've landed a precious Spitfire on its belly because I failed to verify the gear was locked. And that was a very expensive landing. Now, there's nothing to be proud of here. Every one of these incidents stemmed from a personal mistake of mine, and each was the result of being inexperienced. But they do illustrate the appeal of flying. The mistakes are quickly evident. The opportunity to learn and improve is immediate, and you try and avoid the really serious mistakes, much like life. In my full and varied life, I would have to say the most important job I've had ever is being a parent. A parent, as you've heard, of 3 of the most beautiful, interesting young ladies on the planet, all completely different, and they're all with me today. I became a parent late in life, 52 when my first child was born, and I'll be well into my 70s before they're all shipped off to university. And as a result of that messy life I referred to, I'm a single parent. Now, being a senior citizen single parent is not for everyone, but it has worked out for me. It's meant that I could give total focus on my work when I was younger and total focus on family now. And the best news is that in the 16 years I've been a parent, only 3 times in my recollection has anyone referred to my kids as my granddaughters. So there must be some empirical evidence the kids really do keep you young. When I became a parent, I thought that some of my management skills might be useful in dealing with kids. And you won't be surprised that that didn't work out exactly as I hoped. And the main problem is you can't fire your kids. But actually, as the kids got older, we did together evolve a management model that I'm familiar with. I'm still the CEO, and they decided they're the board of directors. That's not entirely a joke. The girls really do think that part of their role is to provide, to me, some counsel and guidance. As my middle daughter said to me, this was 3 or 4 years ago, she was 11, after watching me deal with one of her sisters. And this is word for word, complete with the 11-year rolling of the eyes. "Daddy, let me give you some parenting advice." So what have I learned as a parent? It brings all the lessons of life into focus, that life is messy, that you will make mistakes, that you'll learn from them and forgive yourself for them, that you should never take your eye off the objective, which is to send happy, productive young adults into the world, and that you must never give up, even if you suffer setbacks. Now, you might notice that I've spoken of the lessons of my life without ever giving any advice to you. I've told you some of my story, but left it to you to judge if it's relevant to you. But I am going to finish up with one bit of advice. I've spoken today of some of the qualities I believe have served me well: willingness to take risks, perseverance, focus on objective. I might add some of the basic human values that I believe are so important: treating people fairly, being true to your word, whether it's written down or not. But what I didn't appreciate until later in my life was how these qualities were shaped by my parents. My parents never actually spoke of such things. They simply demonstrated them by the way they lived their lives. And perhaps because of that, I realized too late in life what they had given me, so I didn't have the opportunity to thank them. So my advice to you today is don't forget to thank your parents. They may not have been at your side when you wrote the exams or helped you when you completed your assignments, but they have given you what you needed to achieve this important milestone in your life that you celebrate today. Thank you all for listening to me. Sincere congratulations to every one of our graduates.